So I was sitting at lunch today and a news article came across my phone. Turns out I've been following a little bit about the controversy that's going on right now with Dungeons and Dragons. So if you're been paying attention, obviously Dungeons and Dragons is a tabletop role-playing game. But what's important here, I think, for the Web3 gaming community and crypto games is actually that Dungeons and Dragons and their community right now is going through a lot of the same problems or the same discussions that we've been having over the past few years. So I thought it was really important to go ahead and just ramble off and give you my thoughts about what's happening right now. In general, if you're not been keeping up with D&D, they have an opens games license, which pretty much allows their community to create content and be able to publish that content onto the web, commercialize it, be able to build off of it and grow the culture of D&D, for everyone to be able to enjoy. They've had this for quite a while now, and as you've known, D&D from its homebrew content creator creations have been able to create massive successes like Critical Role, other major Kickstarters that have gotten media attention, and the culture of D&D, especially with the release on Netflix of Stranger Things, has just been growing over the past few years. But we're in a new age now, this age of social media, of internet culture, of Web3 culture, really, where people are more easily able to share their opinions and make sure that the companies that are acting on their behalf, quote unquote, are doing the right things. And if they're not, they can go ahead and lay into them for it. So what ended up happening was that D&D wanted to do an update to their open games license, which pretty much meant that they were going to force royalties on the community if you were over a certain size. So I believe there was a royalty fee if you were earning over 50,000. You had to register with them. If you were making more, then you would potentially have to pay them a percentage up to 25-35% to maintain, your license to be able to use their intellectual property. Now, as you can obviously tell, that this is something that's going to be that would hold back the community from progressing and or kill off major projects that have growing fan bases right now. And when we come to Web3, I know a bunch of you might think that, they're doing this because they want to block NFTs or they want to block cryptocurrencies and people that are wanting to build inside their universe. And that is true. But I think what's more important is the decision about how they interact with the community. What is the relationship going to be like now in the age of social media and with Web3 for commercial companies and their audience? Okay. When I've been doing research on the video game industry specifically, I've been looking at things like esports. I've been looking at things like user created content. I've been looking at third-party website creation, pretty much different businesses, gold farming, different businesses that gamers are running in these digital worlds. And one issue that everyone keeps coming across is that you start to, if you have success and you reach a certain size, then you ultimately have to answer to the IP holders. That is an issue. That gatekeeps your ability to grow. Now that's something that's completely in the control of the owner of the intellectual property, and why we're having these discussions now. We were talking about this idea before of who actually created World of Warcraft. Was it Blizzard, or was it the players of World of Warcraft? It's a chicken and the egg. It's a dance. You need both. And this is something that D&D is going through right now that we've experienced in Web3, and we're going to be learning from our successes and failures just as they are. And hopefully we can all kind of see where the visions align here in terms of community, in terms of value, in terms of ownership, intellectual ownership, digital property rights, you name it. So we're going to go ahead and go over just some key points, things that I highlighted, because today DnD Beyond, the staff, went ahead and released a response to the controversy that's been going on the internet. So they pretty much start here, and this is the article. You'll be able to find this article and some others that we're about to discuss in the description below, so make sure to check out those links there. and go ahead and give us a like and subscribe as we start. So they say that the main reasons why they did this were they were threefold. The first one was to prevent hateful use of their product. I completely understand. The second was to stop those that were attempting to use D&D in Web3 blockchain games and NFTs, which I would love to hear the reasoning why, but for the most part, we can just assume that in a bear market, very few people or companies right now are going to believe in it, and they're going to act accordingly to protect themselves, because they know that the community is able to do these things that they can't control or enforce. So it's going to happen regardless. They want to make sure that they protect themselves in the case that they want to try to shut something down. So there's two. Number three, they want to make sure that major corporations aren't using their content for their own commercial use. Okay, I get it. I understand that. My question really is, when they say major corporations, are they talking about competition like other, role-playing games, or are they talking about the people that are putting out content that is competing alongside, their developed role-playing booklets, right? So whether it's things like Critical Role or other tabletop games, other than creators, I should say, it's to be seen. They say that the main reason for these principles is that they want to be good stewards of the game, which is kind of, it's interesting that you say the word stewards, because you're kind of saying like you're looking over the protection, the goodwill of a project, for the benefit of someone or something else. So that benefit is for the community, is for the creators. So doing something against those people's will pretty much shows or implies that the quote unquote customers or community actually have more influence and power than we may give ourselves credit for. Regardless, something to keep note of. They go on to specifically say that our drafts they did include royalty language, which we talked a little bit about, but that it was specifically meant to target large corporations. If you're earning 50,000, 60,000, 100,000, you're not a large corporation, simply put. But they did not want it to impact their entire community, but their entire community understands that their rights are technically being taken away, even if they're not, quote unquote, a large corporation. So they ended up backtracking. They believe that it's no longer possible to meet those three goals. They do say that they're going to continue with an open gaming license that they're going to adapt, but they don't exactly say what it is just yet. So we're still going to be waiting to see and get more information from them. But they pretty much said that they're not going to be having a royalty structure, and that they specifically want you to know that the content you create, you own. Which, again, going back to digital property rights, intellectual property rights, however you want to look at it, the creator is the one who owns, theoretically, depending on the situation, owns the right of use to their work. And if they're going to be fostering a community that is a right or power that they give over, then it needs to be either, on one side of the fence or the other. You can't kind of go halfway. You can't just be a little bit pregnant, if you know what I mean. They pretty much say here that the reason why they were doing it was because creators were incorrectly alleging that their work was being stolen. This is the part of the letter that I'm not too familiar with, that I'm interested what that means. I actually think this might be the key to the entire letter, but since they don't go into in more detail, I'm going to leave it to you all, the community that are watching the video. If you're D&D fans and you know the history a little bit better than I do, leave it in the comments. I'd love to read up on it. But they pretty much say that it's a risk that they can't ignore. It's something too big that they cannot proceed forward without doing. So their plan is always going to be to solicit the input of the community, which, again, going back to this idea of an open, when we're thinking about crypto, this idea of an open, decentralized community that's able to work together to create these projects is something where I think you can start to see where the goals, no, maybe not goals might not be the right word, but the wants and needs of the community and player base of D&D can also align with the wants and player and needs of the player base of Web3 games, right? Or NFT owners, regardless if it's something like the Bored Ape Yacht Club or any other community that is currently being formed in Web3. They pretty much cover, and say that they love the community and they want to get more feedback, and that, a win for them is a win for the community, and so on and so forth. So in general, the concepts here that the D&D staff are putting out, again, goes back to rights, goes back to digital ownership, goes back to intellectual property, and the ability for someone to use another creator's work to then profit off of. Now, shifting focus for just a second, what does this mean for the Web3 and creator communities in crypto? Well, if you've been following along with A16Z, they've been writing some articles, and if you've also been following, CryptoPunks or any of the other major NFT projects, we haven't been having multiple discussions about creator usage, who owns the IPs of these NFTs. And A16Z put out a really good article about why creators are going for this new type of licensing that you may have been listening to or hearing about, the Creator Commons licensing that pretty much allows copyright. It pretty much allows for creators to be able to allow their work to be used by the public by releasing the rights that normally would apply. And what are some of those rights? So if you're not familiar with copyright work, pretty much if you are the owner of a copyrighted work, after 70 years, that work is then available to be used by the public. This happens on New Year's Day every year, which is called Public Domain Day. And it pretty much means that the Shakespeare, for example, that was written who knows how long ago, that copyright has already disappeared, which means people can then take those stories, those ideas, adapt them, and use their own creative visions to be able to, create new theater, be able to put out new products, be able to monetize. Pretty much it allows more freedom to the public. But in A16Z's article, they discuss a little bit about this CC0 licensing and what it could mean for the community. And I'm going to read directly here from the article. They say, counterintuitively, relative to many classic intellectual property strategies, experimentation and recombination can sometimes grow the value of IP. This is the core dynamic of the open source movement. So when they say can grow the value of an IP, originally the idea of value was that you were the owner, and thus any use of that would accrue the value to you. But if that is with the license in board, they're making the argument that without the license, that value can grow even further, right? By using this concept of the open source movement, which explicitly allows the public to build upon or fork and duplicate existing technology, or work, creative works. A large part of what makes Android, Linux, and other successful open source software projects so competitive is that they embrace these permissionless innovations. Crypto's success at attracting public development is similarly due to its general endorsement of open source and remix culture, which is especially true of some NFT communities. So when I look at NFT communities and I look at also the D&D community, I can see a lot of the same similarities. I can see how you're concerned with your work, and you love the game so much that you want to be able to do some of this and be able to earn a small living to be able to continue progressing down that your creative avenues. And both sides are really trying to find the right method to make this not only legal, but to be able to set up a foundation that can help it grow into the future. So, we hear a lot of arguments about keeping NFTs and crypto out of games and out of, things like Dungeons and Dragons. To be honest, the way I see it is I'd rather have the ability to choose. I would like to see a world where developers have the ability to go ahead and put that wall up or knock it down. Either way, communities will ultimately respond in today's age to what they want and how they want the owner of that intellectual property to act. We've been seeing it in the video game industry for the past few years with Nintendo. They've been putting up a lot of gates about whether or not you can stream their content, put up tournaments, and we can realistically make the argument that it's holding the value back. Now, again, this is a new way of thinking, a new way of valuing, these types of projects when we go to the ideas of decentralization, when we talk about network effects. But I think it's clear from the crypto's perspective, if you're watching this, that value exists. Now, very many people may not recognize it, at least not yet. But when you also look deeper and you see the motivations that other people have, you can see how these thoughts align. So I wanted to go ahead and put my thoughts out there and leave it to you all. Hopefully you were able to take something out of this. Please do me a favor and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to read them, and I'll make sure to go ahead and comment to as many of them as I can. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.